Hey guys, Brian Salter here, and went ahead and made you another video concerning LSA. And naturally, during the video, I get all excited, wound up. So it's just typical me, passionate about it. I want to apologize again for the background noise. Thought I would give you, I don't know, over 30 years of racing experience, and this is how I look at things. I think it will help clarify and open your mind to what's happening with lobe separation angle. So anyway, enjoy the video. Please give me a like, guys, and give me to 20,000 subscribers and buy a shirt. Anyways, I got a little offer coming up soon. I've just been packed. I'm working 14 to 16 hours every day. I have been for weeks on end now. I've about had it. I really truly am probably 18 to maybe more months out on getting things done. But thanks for everything, and I'll do my best to put out information that's valuable to you. All right, enjoy. Good morning, class.
Good morning.
All right, so today we're going to try and put all this together from Monday. The cam at 50 duration, the advertised duration. Today is lobe separation angle, and I have some really good thoughts on it that I think will help nail this down. LSA, lobe separation angle, is what we call it. It's what I call it. I've heard people call it LCA, which is lobe center angle, but I like LSA because it is separation of the intake and exhaust lobes. So what is it? It's separation of the intake, highest lift point, and the exhaust highest lift point. It's in correct degrees of how far apart the intake and exhaust lobes are. Okay? Now, turn this off. How do we get it? This is where I think there's misconception. When a company, and we'll use competition cams for example, when a company, whether it's General Motors or Ford, Chrysler, whoever, when they get a camshaft core, a lot of whoever grinds their cams will get the camshafts from a common core manufacturer. And they order the cams rough milled generally. So the final grinder, who might be, like I said, competition cams, they will order cam cores, and they're all a little bit bigger, right? Like when I did tool and die work, you rough mill parts on a milling machine, and you leave everything 10 thousandths oversized on the mill. We then heat treat it, we then draw it back to get the Rockwell hardness we need, and then we final grind it. We do a precision grind, and you have 10 thousandths to finish everything. Because when you heat treat it, the carbon comes to the surface, it's black, all that. So you need it oversized so you can put it down to the 5th decimal place of perfect size. Well, when cam companies get a core, another company rough mills the core. It then goes to the company, such as Competition Cams. And just for example, a small block Chevrolet, they'll order cam cores, and the lobe separation angle is already put in the core. And I don't think the public understands this. So for example, if I want to take a small block Chevy, or any engine for that matter, and I want to modify it, I bore the cam tunnel bigger. All right. I take it to what the block can stand. So maybe it's 55 millimeter. Maybe that's as big as that block can go. That's a lot bigger than stock on a Chevy, by the way. So I get a bigger journal. I get a thicker center core section, which prevents my cam sagging between the journals with high spring loads. That's why we do that, by the way. When you have high spring pressure, your cam will sag between the front journal, second journal, third journal, whatever. It sags. It dips. Well, think about it. It's dipping every time it rotates, and you're making it weaker. It breaks. So the thicker we can make it, the more stable it is. I'm losing lift and duration when that cam sags. So if I keep my cam core thick, it's more rigid, and I'm actually got at the valve what I planned on. The other thing with the thicker cam is I can run a much bigger base circle. Bigger base circle means more stability. It also means, and this is critical, like remember when I said I don't run 900 or smaller base circles? The reason why I don't is because you are, with a high RPM, a very fast load, you're almost side loading the lifter. In other words, there's no, your lobe starts to look like this. With this being the base circle. It's almost, there's, you know what I'm saying? It's just bad. Your lifter would be here, and it's like putting a lot of pressure on the side of that lifter. And you can break them. No, you can't. It's not that you can, you will. Okay? I would never attempt an 8,000 plus RPM with a 900 base circle. It's not necessary. Why would you do that? I can get 440 lobe lift or 400, about 440 lobe lift. Now, again, try not to chase the rabbit, but we got to start the top here. What is lobe lift? Where my base circle is, on top of that lobe to the imaginary outer edge of the base circle, that's my lobe lift. In other words, that lifter is riding. Let me redraw this. It's getting to be a mess already. Alright, so this part from around here, from there to there, is your base circle. The lifter's just riding it. So the only lifting action is from this side over, and now it starts decelerating till here. Alright? So with the stock journal cam, because you can't go bigger than the journal itself, it won't fit in the block. So the cam bearing journal of the camshaft, meaning this, the cam bearing. I can't make the top of the lobe bigger than that. I mean, I've actually had some bigger than that, and I've had to fish them in. This happened to me a couple times, and we made it work. But 99% of the time, you don't want that. So the top of my lobe needs to be no bigger than that journal. Well, if I'm trying to get lobe lift, what we do is we grind down the base circle. Because we take up that difference with lash and push rod length or whatever, and so the lifting action becomes higher when your base circle gets smaller. That's the whole point. And so if I run a bigger bearing journal and a thicker shaft, I'm able to run more lobe lift. You understand? So when they get these cam cores, like competition cams, when they get a core, it's rough milled. It's roughed in. The lobe separation angle is already put into the cam core. And so when I call them and say, hey, I'm going to bore this cam tunnel out to 55 mil, and I want this cam made. I've had them tell me on numerous occasions, well, on that particular cord type, I don't have the LSA you want. What does that mean? It means they can't just magically, at least not on a lot of the machines, they can't magically punch a button and create my LSA. Not in the typical cam grinding fashion. You understand? they have to have the LSA pre-made into the core. Now, they can move it almost a degree is what I've been told, and they've done it for me. Like if it's on a 110 and I want it on 109, they can move it almost to 109 or sometimes dead on. But what does that depend on? It depends on how big the lobe profile is that I'm going to put on it. In other words, how much room do we have to move that lobe? So that's critical because I don't think people understand that you can't just magically choose any LSA you want unless the company has the ability to do that. The core has to have it pre-rough milled into the shaft. Okay? So, what is it? It is in crank degrees, the separation between peak lift of the intake and everybody always laughs when I draw this one. Doesn't quite, never mind. But if this is peak lift and this is peak lift in crank degrees, that is the angle. So it'd be like, let's just say 110. 110 crank degrees. So if I'm rotating that degree wheel with the cam inside installed, timing chain hooked up, and I find peak lift of my intake load, and I mark it. And then I rotate, keep rotating until I get the maximum lift of my exhaust. The distance between those 2 points is my lobe separation angle. And that lobe separation angle is a big deal. Or is it? Right? Or is it? So how do we get it? Well, as a designer, which was what I fall in under, I choose it.
Do it.
When you get there. So what does it do? If I'm choosing lobe separation angle that I want and not just letting it magically appear, then what does it do? Why am I choosing it? Because a lot of people, including one just last week, or was it last week? Was it? That's a couple days ago. Guy told me, and he's going to watch this video. So, Mark, you're listening, talking to you, buddy. Calls me on the phone. He wants 2 big block motors done for his boat. It's the cigarette boats, right? I do a lot of motors for those things. Got some everywhere. He's in Michigan. So he calls me up. Hello, Mark, by the way. Happy Veterans Day, buddy. He goes, I want the cam like we did this other one, like you did for me last time. And I want you to make sure you keep the same. I want it on 110. Well, I put it on 111. I said, wait a minute. The other engines were 468s, and these are 566. So I can't remember. Anyway, they're much bigger. Bore strokes bigger. Why are you telling me what lobe separation angle to put it on? And of course, we always kid each other, so he knows I'm messing with him, but this is the thing that the public doesn't get. The LSA is not the magic. Not for general population. You need to really have a grip on things to start messing with LSA. In other words, its job is, it is nothing more than a measurement like I just explained. However, when you get to a level of understanding and dyno time like I've had, which is, I don't even know anymore, I can't even count them. you can understand how to manipulate that and get the engine to do things you want it to do. But for the general public, it's a number that they do not understand. All right, now we talked yesterday about at 50 and advertised duration. Let's just here's how we get it. Let's answer this question. So let's say that, and I'm going to choose a different one here. All right. So let's say that we're going to put a cam, we're going to make a cam for a job. It's 230, 280, 234, 284. All right? These lobes, this being intake and exhaust, these lobes, what do? They control how fast and the amount of time that my valve is open. That's what I have right now. I don't have events yet. What are events? Okay? Understand this. Intake valve open, intake valve closed, exhaust valve open, exhaust valve closed. Remember what we said in the other class, that if the valve's never shut, you have no cylinder pressure, no compression, it won't run. If the valve stays shut too long, you won't have any power. So we got to find that magical balance. We have to have a goal in mind. What is our practicality? What are we going to use this for? What fuel are we going to use? What's our starting compression ratio? What's the RPM range? What is our goals? Because it all matters right here. We don't know. All we know from this is how fast and how long they stay open. But we have not set this yet. You know why? Because they're not put on the shaft. We have a lobe. What is this? A profile. We have a lobe profile that we have chosen, that we, from experience, should know that, well, if I lift it at 50 here, the total opening time of the valve is 280 degrees. That's going to give me good torque. It's going to sound great. It's going to be a really good street cam. And with this 4-degree spread, because that's what you got, that extra exhaust should help me get it out a little better. Should help my scavenging effect when we get to that point. And just dual pattern cams are better, period. They just are. Now, for a moment here, let's look at my lobe profiles. This is your intake lobe, this is your exhaust lobe. This right here works really good for high flowing exhaust systems. Good header, good decent sized pipe, like minimum 2.5. High flowing mufflers, mandrel bends. That works okay. But what if I've got manifolds, like not headers but exhaust manifolds, with all these pinch points with cats, pre-cats, resignators, mufflers, and not good mufflers, quiet mufflers. Is that enough exhaust? Well, the answer is not, in my opinion, it's not. The other thing is, and this is where it gets complicated for the person who does not have the experience, is like an LS, like the LS3 for example, flows, the intake side of an LS3 is so good that we need to run a lot of spread, a lot more exhaust than we do intake, because you have a high flowing intake manifold, intake part of the cylinder head, the runner is great, it flows a lot of air right out of the box. You got to have a lot of exhaust so that it can function correctly. Not only that, but you're talking modern vehicles. What does a modern vehicle come with that 1960s cars did not? Converters, resignators, mufflers, 2-into-1 pipe. So I must have more exhaust than I do intake on an LS3. So if I'm at 230, then I'm just going, we're just throwing numbers, right? Let's say we go to 240 and 290. 10-degree spread. And again, finally actually making a cam would not be far from that. It'd be a little tweak here and there. But don't necessarily need that on something else. You understand? So we're choosing our load profile based on what we want the valve train to do. But I don't know what these events are yet. And I won't know those events until I choose the LSA. Because I have to put them two lobes on the shaft. So once I put them on the shaft, I got this new software. It shuts my computer off every 5 seconds. I hate that stupid thing. Come on, man. Once I put them on the shaft, I guess, yeah, there we go. Then we will get events, and we're going to talk about that. So look at, I'm going to change this. All right, Tyler, I want you to read this out to me. We're going to change the board to match my computer so I don't have to go back and forth 900 times. Okay, so on the intake, okay, I can see we got 246, 304, and we got 252, what does that say? 252, 310. Okay, there's my load profiles, and what is the LSA on that job? 111. Okay? What is my valve events? And first of all, I want to put this here, overlap. To get to that, this is important. So once you go over here, I'm going to click on valve events. All right, so intake valve is 41. What is that, 83?
Yeah.
Valve opening is 41, closing is 83, and 86 and 44. 86 and 44. Because I have chosen my lobe separation angle, I now have events. Why? Because I just took them two lobes and put them on a shaft and decided how far apart they are. Once that is chosen, now I have events. You understand?
Yeah.
Now, look back on the cam specs. Okay. I want you to change where it's a little bit down, it says cam lobe center angle. I want you to change that to 108. Hit OK. I'll go back down, it's going to be stupid. 10.1 cam minutes right there. Go up. Oh, here. Look on that. 10-point cam minute. And then put 108 on the intake center line. Yeah, right there. 08. How does it disappear? What takes all these dumb shit? Alright. Now, click on the valve vents. I want to show you something. We're going to move this just so you can get the idea. Same camshaft, same lobes. 111, but now we've changed the LSA to 108. And what are my events?
Your intake open is at 44.
Okay.
Intake closed at 80. Exhaust open at 83 and closed at 47.
So now we changed our LSA from 111 to 108, and look what's happened to our events. Now what does that mean, events? You see the LSA controls when the valve opens and when the valve closes, as far as on the end of the cycle. And what do I mean by cycle? It controls when the intake valve starts to open and when the exhaust valve closes. Well then how come it don't control what the intake valve closes? Because the lobe controls that. The lobe itself controls when it opens and closes by itself, but once I put it on a shaft, where that LSA is when it actually starts to open. And when the exhaust valve closes, the final of that event. Okay? Now how else can I change these numbers on my intake valve opening? I change my load profile. You understand? So if I go to a bigger cam load, is that going to open sooner? If I leave the LSA the way it is? Because here's what you need to understand about LSA. And I think this will completely help you. Here's what you need to understand. I want you to imagine you have this center bar right down the center. And this is our camshaft, our core right here. No, we're going to make it a little bigger. I think this will help you. This is our core. This will be the LSA center line right here. Cam load. Big cam load. What am I saying? It starts from the center and works out. So when you choose LSA, it has the center line angles of the intake and exhaust lobes. And when I go from a little lobe, a small one, when I go from that to a big one, I'm spreading this way.
So your valve stay open longer.
Yes. The valve stays open longer, but the lobe center line angle does not change. Or they don't, like I can go to a much smaller lobe, but keep my LSA the same. Now, with that in mind, watch this right here. Let's just have one lobe on at a time. And we'll draw it side by side. So here's my shaft. And we'll make this our LSA pole, we'll call it.
Okay.
Alright? So here is a lobe. Here is a load. How much overlap do I have? None. Negative overlap. And these cams are at 190 duration. So now I'm going to take that 190 duration cam, I'm going to change it to 300 duration cam. Alright? Notice what has not changed. Here's my overlap. My center has not changed. It's still on whatever we chose. So then, besides, but what if I don't, remember the valve timing and the amount of time the valve stays open in the engine? I don't want to change my overlap using that. Because it goes back to my static compression. If I grow the camshaft humongously to get more overlap, I'm bleeding off compression. The longer the valve stays open, the less cylinder pressure I can trap. So, what do I use then to change my overlap without growing the cam load? My LSA. How in the heck can people say it's not an input? It is an input. And the thing is, it's also a tuning tool. When I design an engine for a race car, I mean, guys, I'm getting 10 calls a week, sending cams all over the world with nothing but, I'm gonna say 98% success rate. There might be some times where it's like, it was okay, but I haven't gotten that yet. The point is, you got to take the time to say, hey, I need to talk to you. I talk to them, every single one of them. I'm on the phone talking to them, writing and taking notes. And having experience in the racing, I know what this thing does. I know what they do. If they're saying to me, my car drives like this, I have to eliminate the fact that the chassis is halfway decent, the guy can drive the car, because no amount of engine or cam will make up for a bad driver. No amount of engine or cam will make up for an ill handling race car. I can't fix that. All I can do, I had guys tell me my car handled great till we put your engine in it. And now I can't keep it on the racetrack. When I hit the gas, I'm turning the other direction. It's because they had a turd for a motor, and now they got a real one. And it just, they have to go back and start over because they didn't have any horsepower. Now they do. And until you actually eyewitness that, you have no idea what that really means. I have eyewitnessed that, guys. It's two times, I won't even call the guy's name, but there's 2 times where we put an engine in a car and watched them wreck every other lap, spinning themselves out. And we laughed the entire time. I have never laughed so hard in my life. Because I told him, how's your car? How's your car? Oh, we got good handling. Okay. The whole race. And we laughed so hard, I'm telling you, it's hilarious. I've seen it twice in my life. Until you've witnessed that. So what is LSA? It's separation of the intake and exhaust loads. And it's got to be decided by the cam grinder up front. Why? Because he has to choose the core that has the ability to be on that LSA. But the designer, the order of operation might be different. I need to choose the right loads. I need to choose the right amount of time the valves will be open, and then I choose where I'm going to open and close them. That's how I approach it. There's probably, I'm sure there's different methods for different people. But if your method is not breaking records and you're not winning races every week, you might want to back up and change. So, this is how I approach it, this is how I look at it, and it makes perfect sense to me. That low profile to me is everything. That low profile is everything because it controls how long my valve stays open. It controls how fast it gets to certain lift points. It controls how gentle or aggressively it opens and shuts the valve. It controls the lift. And that will in turn control and determine the engine characteristics, the personality of that engine. Right there, low profile. Now, I can make this great or I can make this absolute garbage by putting it on the right or wrong LSA. I told you the other day, it's all about pressures, cylinder pressures, right? There are engines, because of the camshaft being right or wrong, that make all their pressures early in the RPM band. For example, the cranking compressions are 250 pounds, but the thing won't get up its own way. Well, how's that possible? Because you're building your pressure at idle. Your cam builds pressure when you turn it over with the starter motor. But by the time you get to 5,000 or 6,000 RPMs, it ain't doing anything. That's not how you build a race engine, guys. You want the engine to get more efficient the higher it revs. I don't care, in the end, obviously I care, but I don't care if it's blowing out 250 pounds at cranking compression. That's not what's important to me. What's important to me is what is it blowing out at 6, 7, and 8,000 RPMs. So how do I control that? You're scavenging overlap. Control that. You can have way too much overlap. Because what happens if I got too much overlap? What's happening in the engine during overlap? Both valves are open. So if I have too much overlap, am I building any pressure?
No.
None. I'm losing it.
Yeah.
In the meantime, while these valves are hung open at the same time, what's my pistons doing? Still going up and down. And the valve's just hanging there. So, reversion happens. You can have exhaust reversion, you can have intake reversion. Because you can have a poorly designed cylinder head with no velocity, and you're going to have reversion at the drop of a hat because your port's too big. And I don't mean like gigantically too big. I'm talking about cylinder head should be done off the valve diameter. When you get the ratios correct off the valve diameter, your velocity will be there. So if your velocity is terrible and your valves are open as the piston's coming up, and by the way they will be in a race engine especially, then you don't have enough airspeed, enough velocity and port energy to overpower that piston as it's coming up. The piston's coming up with the intake valve open, y'all. And if you don't have enough airspeed and velocity to continue to go in as the piston's going up, then you're going to have reversion. What's the first simple sign of that? Intake valve just above that in the port, it'd be black. There'd be combustion in your port. They can say everything. People can say, oh, no, that is the reversion. We just checked my car the other day. Wyatt, right? My car, we built that engine 6, 7 years ago, the 331. Took the carburetor off. You can see right down top of the valve. Did you see any black? Not one bit. 6 years old I've been driving this car. Why? Because I know what I'm doing. Because I understand ratios. I've seen engines that run 10, 15 races and it is black inside the intake. That's a problem. It's not always the head, it could be the cam. You could have just way too much overlap, way too much duration, way wrong valve timing, completely just wrong, and cause this problem. If you're not building pressure, you're not building power. But you have to have the valves open at the same time to let that exhaust help pull the fuel in their end. That's why they're open at the same time. That's the whole point. Scavenging. What is scavenging? If I see Tyler eating a sandwich and I'm starving, and I run over there and steal it from him, I just scavenge that. Tyler, why ain't you eating a sandwich? 'Cause I'm hungry. I am starving. But if the exhaust doesn't flow, then what happens when both my valves are open at the same time? Intake reversion. Why? Because my exhaust is backed up. Boy, if I could get some people to understand this. If you run too small an exhaust pipe, especially when you're doing tests, especially on an actual car, when you got overlap, that exhaust cannot leave quick enough and it will go up the intake port. And it's like talking to the wall. But that's why they don't have a bunch of trophies. I don't know if people think I'm making this up. Maybe come to the shop and see. We're pushing almost 180 wins right now. I need to update my thing. And circle track, just circle track, not drag racing, not the other stuff. Just circle track. 2 championships this year. That's not because I'm bragging, it's because I've worked my butt off for this. And yeah, I don't say things right all the time, but I know I'm trying to get it across to you to understand it. So the whole point of this is for events to control them, and for overlap to dictate how much I have. That nice thumpity sound you hear from race cars is overlap. You remember when we yesterday where it said noticeable idle and smooth idle? How about if we put those in computer and see what our overlap differences are? So let's do that. I'm going to erase this. We're going to put both those cam specs up here. And we're going to see what the overlap is.
So you dictate your camshaft design basically on what it is you want that engine to do.
Oh,
How you want it to
100%.
perform.
100%. It is dictated on what I want it to do. That is 100%. In other words, you got to pick. Now the cam we did the other day was 192, 240,
240,
and
200,
200,
248.
and 248, and it was on a 108. And the book says this is smooth idle. Well, guess what? The overlap on this cam is how much right there?
28.
28, and that is at total duration.
What is that measuring in
The at 50 overlap is what? Click on the at 50 I showed you a while ago, just now. What is it?
though? 20? Negative 20?
Negative.
Negative 20.
Yeah. Sorry, getting my eyes are crooked. Yeah, minus 20. So that's why this one in the book says smooth idle. Because remember, it's on 108. Imagine them two little poles, and you went out 240 degrees of total duration. They're not crossing. At total duration, right at the very end of the intake and the beginning of the exhaust, they're just starting to cross. There's only 28 degrees of time where those two valves are open. But at 50, meaning just the bottom of the lobes are crossing. At 50, they're so far apart, it's minus 20. Okay, now let's go up to the cam we were at yesterday, and that was 212, it's a single pattern, 260, and it was on a 110. All right, so the at 50 is minus 4. Seat to seat is 40. Okay, so I'm going to put that up here. So now the 212, 260 cam on 110 has an overlap of how much again?
40.
40 total. And minus 4 at 50?
Yep.
Okay, do you see the reason why the book says this one is a noticeable idle? Noticeable. Why? Because you have 40 degrees of overlap instead of 28. And minus 20 at 50 and only minus 4 here. Why? Even though the 110 is wider than the 108, the lobe grew 20 degrees. So my lobes are now closer together. So if I'm running a 300 duration cam, like I said, and I don't want 150 overlap, right?
Right, yeah.
Then I'll have to run my LSA, what? We're going to do that right now. I want you to change the, but for whatever reason when you click on it, it disappears. Let me do it. That way we can check it. We're gonna go back to cam specs, and I wanna put right here, we're gonna put a big cam in. 280 at 50. Yes, I know. And we're gonna put 340. 350. 290. Okay. So here we go. Check this out. We're going to put it, and I just made this up, right? We're going to see where we are. We're going to put a pretty good sized cam in here. Alright, so what is it? It's 280, 340?
Yep.
280 at 50, 340 advertised. What's the other one?
290, 350.
290 and 350. That's a big camshaft. Alright, that's a big cam. And that's on a what? 110 LSA? Yeah, 110. LSA 110. You'd never do that, by the way. How much overlap is that? 125 degrees.
I don't think that's gonna go very fast.
You know what that's going to sound like? It's going to sound like a box, a big steel box with about 3 rocks in it. If you've never heard nothing like that idle, it's going to sound freaking awesome. It's just, yeah. I guarantee you the intake will be black by the end of the day. Now, what is it at 50 the overlap?
69.
So it's 69 at 50. Guys, that's a lot. That's a lot. So how do I fix that? What if I want 70 overlap advertised? Yeah, so put the LSA cam center angle. Let's put it on 119. And then don't hit enter or anything. Go up there, hit 119, just hit apply. Alright, so what does that do?
69 and 107.
Hey, amazing. Check this out. If I move my LSA to 119, my overlap is 69.
Yeah.
And what's at 50?
At 50. That's
What?
a 50.
Okay, what is it advertised?
107.
107. Okay, so calmed it down a little bit. So we're 107 and 69. Yeah. That's a big cam. Let's put it at 125 and that'd be about it. I have done a cam on 120 before. It turns 11,000 RPMs.
Jeez.
3-inch stroke, small block.
95 and 35 and 50.
Like 95. And what's the other?
35.
There we go. Now we're getting into, and this is at 125, I said?
Yes.
125 LSA. Do you understand how this is working? You're now taking, you're just taking 2 big fat cam lobes and widen them apart. You see the X, right? You see the cross.
Yeah.
Because the bottoms of them is where your overlap is. And that triangle I drew up here a while ago. We're widening. As I widen them, what happens to my triangle? It gets smaller. That's why it's so important to pick and get the right one. The cam designer, the cam grinder, whoever's going to make this for you, he doesn't care as long as they have a shaft that can go to that LSA. If not, they'll get one made, and it might take a week or 2. And once the lobes are put on the shaft, now you have your valve events. Now some guys will take computer programming and make valve events and then get those numbers and lobes and have it made, right? See, the bottom line is Where on my end of the spectrum, as a designer engine builder, it's different. So a designer engine builder does not look at it the exact way that a cam manufacturer does. All the cam manufacturer does is he needs to know, what do you want and what do you want it on? But I got different questions to answer. Because if I don't get this right, my customer's not happy. The end goal, the end result is not accomplished. And that should always be your primary goal, is what is my end goal? What is my end result? Am I going to accomplish that goal? And you heard me in all these classes talk about heads and talk about cranks and compression ratio, rocker ratios. By the way, guys, the rocker ratio will change my IVO and IVC and all those. Those events are changed when I change my rocker ratio. I heard a guy say once that all rockers don't change the ratio. Yeah, they do. I mean, rockers don't change your valve, your duration at the valve. Yes, it does. Just like lash changes your duration at the valve, and the lift at the valve, and the valve timing. Just like lifter size. If a cam was designed for a small lifter and you put a big one on it, it changes the duration at the valve. Because it picks it up quicker. So, all these, what does all this mean? It means details matter. Details matter. The reason why I have to talk to every single customer, which is mind-numbing, guys. Mind-numbing. Not that I don't like the people, because I do. But you don't understand what it's like to get calls all day long and have to schedule calls at 2 in the morning to talk to somebody overseas. I got 2 engines going to Sweden. I got stuff going everywhere. Dubai, Australia, multiple pieces in Canada. Engines out west, engines up north, engines down south, engines in England. And all these people are on different time zones. Everybody wants my attention last week. It's like, but I want to do the best job I can, which is what I'm trying to teach you to do. And you got to spend the time to get this right. Is there a paper form that you can fill out? Yeah, there is. Like a build sheet request or a cam spec sheet request, or any kind of request, right? But the problem is when I start asking questions, the paper just don't give me the answers. I can't get the feel of what's happening unless I talk to the person. And I think that is the big difference. Is one is knowing what to do, and number two, actually getting a feel from the guy who's driving that car. Or just simply, this is what I want this thing to do. Street rod or daily driver or a tow truck. How many people want tow truck stuff done? They want to be able to barely touch the gas and rip the rear end out. No problem. I don't agree with high horsepower engines are hard to drive. No, they're not. The old ways they were. But now I've got 880 horsepower pump gas big blocks that drive like grandma's car. Literally idle at 900 RPMs. Hydraulic stuff. 880 horsepower. No problem. It's not given to me. I don't buy parts from Summit Racing and put it together and there it is. No. It's all the little tricks that I do that I was taught. I had to learn it. The rings and the block work and the head work and the intake work and all the little stuff adds up to, by the end of the day, maybe 50 to 100 horsepower more than what somebody else gets with the same parts. And that camshaft is part of that. If there's 30 to 50 horsepower between camshafts with the same numbers, then don't you want to be on that positive side of that? Absolutely. And that low profile is everything. And getting the LSA, when you get the cam made, getting that overlap correct. Where do these valve events start and end? How much time do I want this valve open? What is my end goal? How much compression do I have? That's got to be answered. How much RPMs are we turning? Does he want to adjust valves or not? How much fuel, what kind of fuel we got? What a lot of questions. Block work, right? I've had cams that I've designed that I will not give them until I get the blocks and modify the oiling system, and then they get it. I got some in Ohio like that. A couple of them. That the cams we are putting in them are such that if I don't do the block work, they're not going to live. But if I do the block work, they no problems. Because remember we talking about opening that valve so fast, the lifter? We're talking about, boom, and it goes to the moon. But it works awesome, but you gotta have the right oiling or it ain't gonna survive. So, you got this. It's not rocket science, it's just important. You do not walk by LSA and go, whatever. You'll be second rate the rest of your life. You look at LSA as for what it is. It is a tool. It is a tool to tune and get that thing perfect. If you don't pick the right lobes, it don't matter anyway. But if you get the right lobes and put them in the wrong spot on the shaft, it don't matter anyway, because it's still gonna suck. You gotta get it all together. And that's part of it, LSA. Any questions?
That covers everything. That covers everything. That covers everything.
What? What did I say? Oh, that covers everything?
Yeah.
Remember, the valve cover is the window to the engine's soul. Not the outside of it, but underneath it. Because it really is. What's underneath that thing? What's inside that block? You can have two engines side by side, built by X and built by Y, and they can be completely different zip codes internally. Look the same outside, sound the same outside, but don't run the same. That's proven week in and week out. All right, it's time for a break.